You're listening to BioTalk with Rich Bendis, the only podcast focused on the biohealth capital region. Each episode, we'll talk to leaders in the industry to break down the biggest topics happening today in biohealth.
Hi, this is Rich Bendis, your host of BioTalk. And as you know, we bring you leaders from the biohealth capital region and talk about interesting things, especially things that we think are stimulating our economy and maybe some positive developments in economic development. And today we have one of the leaders of economic development in the biohealth capital region, but he's also had the opportunity to do these things at the national and at the state level. And we're going to find out about that from Ben Wu, who is the CEO, Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation. Ben, welcome to BioTalk.
Oh, thanks, Rich. It's a pleasure to be here. Appreciate your leadership also in what you're doing to support life sciences, not just in Montgomery County, but also in the state of Maryland.
Thank you very much. We're going to talk more about that and how we're trying to work together to help build this ecosystem for everybody so we can be number 3 in the United States pretty soon here, Ben.
That'd be great.
So you probably know everybody in the state and everybody in the region already, but for those people who don't know Ben Wu, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody, a little bit about your background and how you evolved to where you are today?
Well, Rich, it's a pleasure to be the president and CEO of the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation. Montgomery County, Maryland is home for me. And so being able to, in a sense, come home and be able to help support economic development in the area where I grew up, where my family lives, is a terrific opportunity for me. And I'm thrilled to be back here. I've had a mixture of engagement on the federal, the state, and local levels. Previously, I worked for Connie Morell at a law school, who was a member of Congress for Montgomery County in Congress. And Connie was the chair of the technology subcommittee in the House, which during the advent of the internet and a number of medical breakthroughs like genetic testing and human cloning, she chaired the subcommittee that led a number of those initiatives. So after I left Congress, I went to work for President Bush and George W. Bush's administration, and I was the Deputy Undersecretary of Commerce for Technology and also Assistant Secretary for Technology Policy at the Department of Commerce.
That's where we first met.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, under Mary Good.
Back in the day.
Oh, back in those days, yeah.
And under those positions, I had the responsibility of not just supporting our nation's international competitiveness, but also to have oversight authority over NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which is our nation's oldest federal laboratory. And then I went to work for governors in Maryland, most recently Governor Hogan, the current governor of Maryland, as the Deputy Secretary of Commerce. So it's been terrific to be able to engage with you on all those levels, on the federal, the state, and local level, Rich, and to be able to partner with you and BHI on ways in which we can support our preeminence in life sciences and also to make sure that the assets that we have that support our biotechnology ecosystem can help leverage our standing and help support our economic development.
Thank you. I think that we have a great platform and foundation to build upon here in Montgomery County, Ben. And what's funny is that it goes to show that you really need to be nice to people when you meet them because you never know how many times you're going to interact with them throughout your life. And this covers a span of, when were you the Undersecretary in Commerce? How many years ago was that?
That was at the very beginning of the new century.
Okay. So we're talking 2 decades now. So I don't want anybody to think or know how old we are. But yet, anyway, we have survived.
So the takeaway, Rich, out of this BioTalk is always be kind to people.
Yeah, no question about it.
When you're going to be engaging with them again.
Lessons learned. But what would be interesting is that you've had a chance to work at the national, state, and the local level. And talk a little bit about the difference environment-wise. And you've worked for Republicans and Democrats. You've been in all different types of administrations at different levels. How do you compare the differences and what do you enjoy the most about each?
Well, they each bring different perspectives in terms of the policies and initiatives that you create. Nationally, there's also the international competitiveness component as well. And you're trying to create a ecosystem that can be successful, but they also will require a lot of state and local participation as well. And in the state, in Maryland, we have 24 jurisdictions, and you're trying to create a ecosystem there that can be supportive and to be balanced. And then at a local level, we can get much more granular based off of the assets that we have and the directives that we're trying to achieve. And so each has their own distinct personality, but clearly working on the local level, you can make a much more direct impact. But ultimately, I do think that for us in Montgomery County, because we are the largest jurisdiction and because we comprise 25% of the state's economy, so one of every $4 in our state flows through Montgomery County. I think having that partnership on both the federal, the state, and the local level is so important. And certainly for us in the life sciences realm, as you know, our assets are on the federal, state, and local level. So it's important that we be able to bring in all of those levels and all of our assets if we're trying to make sure that we are able to leverage them as successfully and optimally as possible.
Well, there's no question that the network you have built over your career can only benefit you basically because you have to, as you say, you have to interact at all different levels in order to make the economy grow. So I think that does give you a distinct advantage in your role as the CEO of MCEDC. But you can't do it alone, and it takes a team. So talk a little bit about the Economic Development Corporation. Talk about the team you've built, because I think you've come in and almost rebuilt the team after you've come in to take over as a CEO. And then we'll talk a little bit about the programs after about that. Let's talk about the structure and your key team members now.
Well, thanks, Rich. I came on board at the very, very tail end of 2019. So I came in just in time to take a holiday vacation. So for all intents and purposes, I began at the beginning of this year. And for the Economic Development Corporation, our main mission is to grow the county's economic development, grow jobs, help businesses be attracted to Montgomery County, to attract, retain, and expand these businesses. And the traditional mission of the EDC has evolved since then because of the pandemic crisis and COVID-19. I clearly could not have anticipated when I started the position at the beginning of this year that we were going to face the biggest public health pandemic and crisis in our generation, with also the economic devastation that would follow, and then coupled with the turmoil of current events from racial equity to demand to an inclusive economy, and even buffeted by some of the political headwinds that we're seeing. Things have obviously changed since the beginning of this year. So we've had to pivot and adjust our traditional mission of attraction, retention, and expansion to also include the pandemic response and reopening and also eventual recovery. So all of those issues are making us have to move very nimbly as we move forward in our efforts. But economic recovery, looking at the ecosystem post when we get to some normalization, which we hope will be sooner than later, but looking at how we can leverage our assets to get to the other side to recover from this pandemic is right now preeminent issues and prominent issues that we're facing and within our organization. We have a great team, fortunately, and we have a terrific group of committed folks who are looking to help transform Montgomery County's economic development posture and trying to ensure that our ecosystem is strong, to be able to be much more business friendly, and to be able also to look at ways in which we can continue partnerships, not just between the national, state, and local levels, but also regionally as well. And our business development team is led by Brad Stewart, who you know quite well. Brad is a former CEO and executive from our life sciences community. And so having Brad lead our business development team is terrific because he brings in a level of expertise and a network that has not just been very effective generally, but also to be able to respond as effectively and as expeditiously as we need to for responding back to the COVID-19 and pandemic crisis issues that face us.
I mean, you're fortunate to have an experienced person in an industry that is vibrant during this pandemic. And I want to focus a little bit on that because at BioHealth Innovation, we're very fortunate because we haven't seen a decrease in business. Most of the people that we are working with, businesses were critical and essential. So a lot of them had to do their research and were able to work in their labs and are still working in their labs with the proper protocols. But yet the biohealth life science industry has sort of maintained some stability during the pandemic and the COVID-19. But you represent large and small businesses in every industry sector. And life sciences is very big in Montgomery County, but you have hospitality, you have transportation, you have the restaurant and tourism businesses and everything else that's going on. Talk a little bit about how this pandemic has impacted Montgomery County and where do you think the areas are that need the most assistance at this time, Ben?
Fortunately, we have a good foundation in Montgomery County. And because we are 25% of the state's GDP, it seems clear, and I share this with the governor also, that if the state is going to recover, that recovery has to be led by Montgomery County. And prior to the pandemic, Montgomery County and the state were in very enviable positions. The state of Maryland, under the governor's leadership, continues to lead the Mid-Atlantic region in job growth. And also, we achieved the lowest unemployment rate in decades. So everything was going very well. And the state's unemployment level was around 3.3 back in March of this year, reflecting the numbers prior to the COVID-19 transmissions. In Montgomery County, we were almost a full percentage point underneath there. But obviously, the pandemic has changed a great deal. And while the nation's unemployment levels are significantly higher, they've tripled since the pandemic. In Montgomery County, we've been able to fall well under the national level. So it is true, just as BHI is doing well, especially in our life sciences, that uniformly not all of the industries are performing at the same level. And we see that especially hard hit with the small businesses such as restaurants and retail for obvious reasons. And then also, not too many people appreciate the fact that in Montgomery County, we have 50% of the publicly traded companies' GDP in Montgomery County. And if you go across river into Virginia with Hilton, we have 70% within our region. So the hotel and hospitality industry is a significant industry sector, and they've been rocked as well by the pandemic. Not everybody is performing as well as some of the other industry sectors. Life sciences continues to remain an anomaly, but fortunately for us, it's also where we have some of our greatest strengths. But even before the pandemic, we have a good foundation of entrepreneurs, startups, and businesses that are fast growing. And Inc. magazine does an annual ranking of the Inc. 5000. And their latest rankings, which came out just a few weeks ago, showed that nearly 1% of our nation's fastest growing companies are in Montgomery County, according to the Inc. 5000. And those companies, the 49 companies that we have that made the list, they run the gamut and the spectrum of different industry sectors. But included in there, as you would expect, are also the life sciences companies and technology companies, because we have great assets, but also we have a highly educated workforce, and our economy tends to skew towards innovation-led and technology-led economic growth.
Yeah, I think that, as you say, we do have a diversified economy, but one of the things that we're beneficial for is having a lot of government workers, because if you look at NIH, FDA, NIST, and a number of the other federal agencies, I don't think that they were as impacted as negatively from a layoff standpoint or a reduction in business, because I think that there's been continuity in employment there, and they're all potentially working remotely unless they're essential to go inside. But I think that with those high-skilled, highly educated workers, I think Montgomery County is the most highly educated county in the United States, if I'm not mistaken, Ben. Is that true?
Per capita, that's correct.
Per capita, yeah. So I think that does give us an advantage, especially with some of those larger institutions, of not having to be as negatively impacted with the COVID-19. But let's talk a little bit about one of our strengths, and that's really the biohealth industry. I think the sun is shining on Montgomery County right now. A lot of that is due to us being one of the vaccine global headquarters of the world. some of this is being demonstrated by the warp speed funding coming out of BARDA, which everybody is pretty much familiar with right now. I just got an update from Pete Briskman from JLL, who did a presentation last week for BizNow, and he stated 5 out of the top 10 companies in the United States that received BARDA funding, the largest amounts of BARDA funding, 4 of them were from Montgomery County. And then in addition to that, there's 40 companies in Maryland that have been involved in COVID-19. A high percentage of them in research in therapeutics, vaccines, or diagnostics are located in Montgomery County as well. So we are actually becoming one of the epicenters for what would be, as you say, the recovery, or looking at some of the cures or vaccines that are going to impact people globally right in our own backyard in Montgomery County.
Yeah, absolutely, Rich. In the critical race for a COVID-19 vaccine, I think that the United States and really the world has its eyes squarely set on Montgomery County, Maryland, because not only are we the home of the National Institutes of Health, which is providing a lot of the research, and that includes Tony Fauci's NIAID, but also the FDA, which is going to play a critical role in the regulatory approval of one of the, or many, actually, I shouldn't say limited to one, but many of the various vaccines for coronavirus, that just in the past month and a half in Montgomery County, we've had over $3 billion invested in public and private vaccine research and manufacturing funding. And it's really terrific because I think we can all proudly say in Montgomery County that we are helping not just the country, but potentially the world in trying to find a vaccine that will help us move to some sort of normalcy, because it's so critical for us to give consumer confidence and also to be able to get to the other side, to be able to have that vaccine. And out of the top 5 vaccine candidates around the world, we have a very significant role in 3 of the 5, from Novavax to Emergent with their partnership with J&J. AstraZeneca, their U.S. vaccine headquarters is located in Rockville here in Montgomery County. And then there's also work with Moderna and Pfizer as well. And I was just last week, Thursday, with the governor and the county executive, and we went to tour Novavax and get a chance to look at what they're doing and go into their labs and talk to the people who have been really making great strides in this effort. And Novavax is a terrific company. It's local. It started out as an infectious vaccine service to trying to do research, and they decided that they wanted to utilize their expertise and try to help create a vaccine back at the very start of the pandemic. And so their folks, their scientists, were working 24/7 around the clock for months, and they were able to arrive at a vaccine that they believe is a very strong candidate. And what's another attractive aspect of the Novavax vaccine candidate versus any of the others is that they are able to keep it at room temperature, whereas Pfizer's, for example, requires it to be at minus 70 degrees, which is like nitrous cold. And so there are potential competitive advantages that they have. And so we're very, very excited about that development. But that's one effort among many of Montgomery County companies that have really just stepped up to the plate in very significant ways. And they are just doing not just wonderful work, but they are helping to lead the way to, as you said, Rich, to truly make Maryland and Montgomery County the nation's vaccine capital. And our biotech companies are a major force in fighting this pandemic. And we couldn't be more proud of them because the county, the state, the country, the world can benefit from our local talent and ingenuity. And we're also leading the way to help save lives with our unparalleled vaccine research and manufacturing capabilities. And it's not just Novavax and Emergent that I had mentioned. It's other companies like GlaxoSmithKline, Scenaria, Zalogen Labs, Vigene. I mean, I could go on and list all of these companies that are just doing terrific work and continuing to reinforce the notion that the place to be for life sciences is in Montgomery County, in Maryland, and practically there's no more exciting place to be right now as the world is grappling with COVID-19 and our response back.
And I know that even though you had to focus on the COVID response, your retention and attraction business didn't go away. And I would hope that based on everything shining over Montgomery County right now, it might make your attraction business a little bit easier in the future based on how we talk about clusters and people don't understand what clustering really means. But when you take AstraZeneca working with Emergent on a manufacturing basis and Novavax doing the same thing and GSK and all of the partnerships of these neighbors who reside and operate in the same county working together, and then having the FDA and the NIH from a research and a regulatory standpoint in your backyards, there is no other region of the United States that has as strong a cluster to be able to address this pandemic or potential future pandemics in the world.
It's that network and community that you're referring to, Rich, that continues to make Montgomery County so strong, as well as our proximity to assets, especially federal assets, and also our workforce. There are a number of great partnerships that have developed as a result of not just the coronavirus, but some of opportunities that exist. Vigene and Altimmune has created a vaccine partnership as a result of this. And we had also Aurinia Pharmaceuticals. They chose Rockville as their headquarters coming in from Canada, which was a huge win for this area. And they bring a skill set that we have been trying to enhance on the commercialization side. So we're getting ready to help them launch their first product. We also have construction of headquarters for Autolus and Regenix Bio, and we were able to attract Nobel Pharma to create their first United States subsidiary. They're based in Japan. And also we see a number of other expansions from Kaijin to Emergent. And Vigene has new headquarters that opened up in Rockville as well. Viela Bio is doing terrifically. Oncolommune has a $56 million Series B funding that they just received. And then Kite has also expanded locally as well. And On Demand Pharma were able to attract from outside of the county to locate in Montgomery County. So the attraction, retention, and growth opportunities for life sciences companies in Montgomery County has been very strong. And it's, as you would expect, given our assets, but relative to our peers and competitors around the country who are not having that kind of growth in any industry sector, this is unique. And it's one that we're going to continue to support because the demand is there. One area in which we can continue to enhance our attraction opportunities is also through the networking and the conferences that we're doing. And I know that we're partnering with you in October for the BioInnovation virtual conference that we're hoping to be able to not just allow for more networking, but will help continue to get the word out about Montgomery County as a place to be, as a vaccine capital of the world. So on October 5th and 6th, we're looking to learn more about the trends and the insights that drive the life sciences in Montgomery County and in Maryland.
We also have another one coming up. October 19th is the BioHealth Capital Region Forum, the 6th annual one, which will be happening, which we normally have at AstraZeneca. And we had about 1,200 people last year, but it'll be virtual. And then the 20th and 21st, one of the things MCEDC and BHI are working on is how do we attract more venture capital to Montgomery County, because you can never have enough. So we're going to have our third annual BioHealth Capital Investment Conference. We hope to invite 100 companies. A high number of them will be from Montgomery County, and 40 to 50 investors from around the United States, around the world, to connect people looking for money with people who have money. And so I think as negative as COVID is to what it's doing to people around the world globally, it is also shining a light to say there are some fantastic emerging companies within Montgomery County that would be great investments for some of these venture capital firms, family offices, angel investors that we need more of to support the growth of what we're doing in this region. And I know that's something we're going to continue to partner on, Ben.
Absolutely. And I think those conferences are helpful to make sure that we amplify the message of what we can bring to be able to remind people or inform them that they don't know that Montgomery County is a place to be. So if you're a venture capital investment firm, that you should be looking at Montgomery County.
For sure. You've been in your job about 9 months right now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Counting, almost 9 months exactly.
almost 9 months. So let's talk a little bit about your first 9 months, and really more importantly, what's your vision for the future for MCEDC?
Well, right now, I think trying to help support the economic recovery, because we are expecting, through the good work of the life sciences companies in Montgomery County, to be able to have a vaccine and to be able to resume some sense of normalcy in our lives and in our economy. But we also recognize that this transition to get to there has been rather difficult for a number of businesses, and that we'll need to have businesses continue to reevaluate not just their operations, but their business models in light of the upcoming future. So trying to not just create strategies that will promote an economic recovery, but also to make us stronger than we were before, to be able to, in a sense, take advantage of this crisis to create new opportunities, and also to help transform and reimagine the Montgomery County business climate and the way in which Montgomery County does business. Because quite frankly, Montgomery County has been tagged with, perhaps unfairly, but nevertheless it exists, a reputation as not being as business friendly as it could be. We want to be able to take measures to try to combat that, but also to really significantly transform the way that we do business. It's a model that we actually use in the state to some success. The state of Maryland, before Governor Hogan's arrival, was criticized for its business friendliness. And in fact, the governor ran on that platform that if elected governor, he would make Maryland open for business and to transform the way that we do business and conduct our economic development. And so after his election, and I served on the transition team as well, we set about to try to make those transformations. And I think we have a very analogous situation here in Montgomery County. So we're going to try to not just borrow some of the playbook that we use in the state, but also to be able to carve our own identity and new way of doing things. And so the hope is that that'll be a positive byproduct from this crisis as well.
I think that change is starting to happen, even though it might be slow. But I had the opportunity to do a BioTalk with Jeff Galvin with AGT last week, and he just expanded his space. And normally space expansion it's a little different than building a new building. It might not be as difficult, but it's still, you have to go through all the permitting processes in the county. And one of the things he said in the past, normally these things would take a year to 18 months, and they were able to expedite it in 6 months. And then people might say 6 months, that's a long time. But yet generally that's warp speed compared to sometimes how long it took to get some of these things done in the county many years ago. So I think if we want to attract, retain, and grow our businesses here, we're going to, as you say, need to become more business friendly. But I'm starting to see subtle changes occur to where that's happening.
We're beginning those efforts right now, Rich, and I'm glad that Jeff and AGT is seeing it. We're also applying these Tiger teams to try to expedite for a number of other expansions that we have, especially in the life sciences area, with the argument that these folks, especially they're receiving Operation Warp Speed funding, or they're working on important vaccines or research, that time is of the essence, that we need to move quickly and expeditiously. And so we've created a more streamlined process. The key now is to apply that process across the board. So it's not just for life sciences to meet an immediate need, that it becomes part of the regularized routine and standard operating procedure for a lot of the way that we conduct permitting, procurement, and all the other things that might otherwise hold back a company. And that has made it particularly burdensome for Montgomery County. So we're trying to institutionalize a lot of these changes. The good news is that while we're leading on that, it hasn't been difficult at all to get the buy-in from the county executive, from the county council, and even from the agencies. I think they all recognize that they understand the importance of pitching in and doing what we can, especially now. And so our goal is to make sure that this is not just a good news story that's a blip in the timeline, but one in which it becomes institutionalized, a standard operating procedure.
Well, congratulations on that progress, Ben. And we're talking with Ben Wu, who's the CEO of Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation. And the interesting programs, challenges, and opportunities that lie before him. And before we close, I'm going to give you the opportunity. You can have an open mic for the listeners. You can talk about anything you would like to share with them or anything you'd like to talk about with MCEDC.
Thank you, Rich, for giving me and the MCEDC a platform to reach out to your listeners. I think what I would ask from all of your listeners that are in the life sciences communities is to let us know if there's ways in which we can help and to keep up the good work that everyone is doing. It's really a sense of pride, I think, for all of us when we can reference what we are doing and have done to meet the response for this pandemic. And it's not just on the vaccine research. It extends even more fundamentally back when this hit initially on trying to ensure that we had adequate PPE, that we had the response for testing. People were just stepping up. Companies were pivoting from their original business models to be able to say, oh, let's see if we can help on this effort and utilize the resources and expertise that we have. And that's quite frankly how Novavax got into the game with their vaccine candidate. So the life sciences community has continued to shine and show their worth, not just from an economic development perspective, but also what they have done for the community. And I think that we're all appreciative of that. So in return, we want to ensure their continued growth. And we're committed to making sure that these companies, as they look to expand, that whatever needs to be done from a permitting or any regulatory perspectives, or to try to help support companies and innovators that are looking to start up, to try to find access to capital and to support their business formation. We're partnering with you, Rich, and BHI on SBIR and SSTR outreach to ensure that our local startups might be able to tap into that critical funding. And then we just partnered with TEDCO. They've just received a FAST grant from SBA to help support SBIRs and STTRs as well. And so we're tapping into our network to try to ensure that the recipients of their support are reflective of the demographics of the population in Montgomery County, but also that is as diverse as possible so that we can try to have as inclusive a not just economy, but also to have the diversity that we want to see in our startups and entrepreneurs. So it's all a collective effort, and we just are one spoke of the wheel. And it's not just on the national, state, and local level. It's also this public-private partnership that is going to be required. And within the EDC, the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation, we are a public-private partnership. So we continue to try to work with government as well as industry, and then organizations like yours that are very supportive of our community. It's a partnership that we want to continue to grow and take to the next level. So thank you, Rich, for all that you do. And to your listeners in the life sciences community, thank you for all the work that you do to help not just strengthen Montgomery County and Maryland, but also the country and the world.
Well, thank you, Ben Wu, the CEO of Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation. And we wish you the best in the recovery, because your success is important to everybody that's listening right now, since Montgomery County is so important to the state and regional economy. What you're doing to help companies come out of this stronger is extremely important to what we're doing for everybody in the country. So, Ben, it's great to partner with you, and we'll catch you after the pandemic and talk about it post-pandemic when you've actually had everything fully recover. You can talk about some more successes that have occurred within Montgomery County. So thank you very much for being on BioTalk.
Okay, thank you, Rich.
Thanks for listening to BioTalk with Rich Bendis.